Now, if I said to you something very special is happening in Italy, you probably think of Thiago Motta's Juventus or Daniele De Rossi's Roma, or maybe even what's going on with Carlos Sainz at Ferrari. Okay, maybe that's the wrong sport. However, I want to take a deeper look into a club that not very many people are talking about, and one that could actually surprise Serie A. And even more so, it's a club that links Raphael Varane, Dennis Wise, Thierry Henry, Cesc Fabregas, and if you look hard enough, even George Clooney, and maybe even Madonna. I might be pushing it a little bit there. But before we actually get into the video, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We are on the road to 1K, and hit that like button as well. It would be greatly appreciated. But now let's take a look into how another disciple of Pep Guardiola has taken Como 1907 to the Serie A for the first time in 22 years. So what is the history of Como and what makes them so special? Well, if you can, I want you to cast your mind back by about 22 years. Personally, I was just being born. But for some of you, I know that's probably not possible. But anyway, this was the last time that Como actually played in the Serie A. And to say that the club has been through a lot since then would be one hell of an understatement. Since then, the club has been bankrupt twice. They've dropped as low as Serie D, which, believe it or not, if you know the alphabet, maybe you don't, is the 4th division of Italian football. In other words, it's a good job that Como has some lakes and some really pretty scenery, because otherwise there wouldn't have been much going for it. However, despite all this, the club slowly managed to creep their way back up across the leagues. I think they end up in Serie C. But in 2016-17, there was an attempt to buy the club or take over the club by, weirdly, Michael Essien's wife. But this fell through, resulting in the club falling back down to the Serie D. But since 2019, the club seems to have found a bit of a positive direction, with new owners and advisors, including, as I mentioned, Thierry Henry, Dennis Wise, and they now find themselves, as I said, in the top tier of Italian football, and they're building a rather interesting squad. Now, as part of this whole development thing that they had going, the gradual improvement that the club implemented, in 2022, the club signed Cesc Fabregas, which was obviously at the time a statement signing. But they offered him a bit more than just as a player. He also was given a bit of a stake in the club. He was also given a future direction of eventually becoming a coach there. So I think there was a lot more that appealed to him than just playing football. And after 1 year, he did actually step down from his playing position and ended up going straight into a coaching role, primarily as an assistant manager. However, I'm pretty sure there was a view for him to become first-team manager as soon as he stopped playing at the end of his 2-year contract. Probably so he could follow in the footsteps of his idol, Mikel Arteta. Now, I am partly joking about that, but he will actually be the 4th disciple of Pep Guardiola, who's this Spanish midfielder who's turned into a brilliant manager like Xabi Alonso, like Xavi Hernandez, Mikel Arteta. He's now the 4th of his kind. And it's pretty safe to say that Fabregas has played under some of the best managers. He's certainly picked up some traits that I'm sure they would have taught him. I mean, when you look at the likes of Mourinho, Conte, Del Bosque, Pep, and of course Arsene Wenger at Arsenal as well, he had some really, really good managers that he played under. So he's probably got a pretty good tactical brain as well. And after Como eventually did sack Moreno Longo, Cesc Fabregas was made a temporary coach for only 1 month, because I think he was given some kind of 1-month permit because he didn't have his UEFA Pro licence yet, only his UEFA A licence. So he was only able to temporarily take charge. So the club brought in, and I think this was a pretty smart move from them, Oisin Roberts, who technically was actually brought in as the club's head of development, but because he also had a pro licence, for the rest of the season he was able to fill that coaching role that was just void in that moment of time, and Fabregas resumed as an assistant coach until he then got his qualifications. And with the upcoming season, Fabregas now has his UEFA Pro licence. He will be taking the managerial role, and he will lead Como in the Serie A for the first time in 22 years, and as you can already tell, if you haven't seen on Twitter, he is using his power, he is using his fame, if you will, to produce a mental squad. I mean, considering the size of the club, they're doing pretty well. So let's take a look what the squad is looking like and what kind of style of football will they play next season. Now don't worry, this isn't some entire tactical breakdown. I can do one of them if you really want, but I'm going to cover the pretty obvious patterns of play that Cesc Fabregas likes to implement and the main kind of style that the club will use going into the Serie A, and how their new signings might also fit into this, because they have made quite a lot of signings and I don't think they're finished yet. So as for their lineup, I think it's going to look something a bit like this. So we'll start off with the goalkeeper. Obviously, there could be more signings that happen between now and when I make this, when this video gets uploaded, and certainly between now and the start of the season. And they are linked with wingers like Rodri, I think, from Real Betis. And there's a couple signings here that aren't officially confirmed, but could go through. So we're going to start off with in the goalkeeping position. And we've got Pau Lopez, who is likely to sign from Marseille, coming in, I believe, on a loan with a obligation to buy if they stay in the league. I think he's a brilliant goalkeeper. He's certainly going to be able to use his experience of playing at Roma and Marseille, and he's also in his prime age of about 29 years old, so I think he should be able to do a pretty good job. And should he get injured, then fear not, because they have also a pretty decent backup. They could replace him with a 41-year-old ex-World Cup and Euros winner who's also played for Barcelona, Liverpool and Napoli. It's Pepe Reina. There we go. Also Spanish. Starting to see a theme here. That theme doesn't end just yet, because we also have, I'm going to put Pau Lopez back in goal. We also have the left back. You might recognise him. He played for Liverpool. He played for Villarreal. No, it's not Pepe Reina playing at left back. It's actually Alberto Moreno. Again, a brilliant signing that they've managed to make, I believe on a free transfer as well. I think Fabregas is pretty much the main reason behind all these signings, obviously being Spanish, probably got a bit of an influence among a lot of these players, played with the likes of Pepe Reina at Spain, so he's obviously using his power, using his connections to draw a lot of these players in. There's also talks that they've been in phone calls with Anthony Martial, which is a signing that they wouldn't be able to make unless they had a high profile manager, which obviously they do. Now, going into the centre-back positions, there is 25-year-old Desena, who actually, I believe, got 6 goal contributions in about 33 starts for Cagliari last season. I think he's been a really good signing for them. Well, will be a really good signing for him. But alongside him is a player that you might have heard of, you might not have heard of. His name is Rafael Varane. No, I'm not joking. They've managed to pull this off, and I don't know how. Like, as in the ex-Man United and ex-Real Madrid World Cup winning centre-back. I mean, fair enough. They've also got some other brilliant names in their squad. I mean, you've got the likes of Simone Verdi, or Simone Verdi, whatever his name is, who has over 230 appearances in the Serie A. They have the ex-Wolves and ex-AC Milan striker in Patrick Cutrone, and an Italian international in Andrea Belotti. So they're certainly starting to build one hell of a squad. And if we actually set it up, we could see a squad that lines up something a bit like this. I'll try and put players in where I can. So we got that's Arthur Melo, by the way, who played for played for Liverpool, but played for Fiorentina, played for Juventus. That one's not confirmed, but I do believe that's a signing that could go through. You've got Da Cunha, you've got Verdi, or this could be Strafazza, or Stravazza, I don't know, I'm not Italian. And then you've got Andrea Belotti and Patrick Cutrone, and they set up in this 4-2-2 formation. Well, kind of. We'll get into that. So pretty much this squad isn't short of experience, and they have plenty of match winners that could probably get hold of a game for them when they are struggling against some teams. Obviously the Serie A is going to be a much higher level of competition. They need these players that are able to take the game by the scruff of the neck and maybe get them a point, maybe save them in the dying moments. They seem to have that in the likes of Belotti, in the likes of Melo, in the likes of Moreno, all these players who have got that experience. Now, they actually tend to line up in either a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-4-2, something a bit like this, but it's quite common regardless of what formation they start in. They actually transition into a 4-2-2, like I mentioned. It's not really a conventional 4-2-2 though. It actually sits something a bit more like this with the wingers. If I can move him, there we go, high and wide. It's more of a 4-2-2 like this. Very interesting, but I like it. I like how this then develops in play and how this is used in transition. So as we see a lot these days, goalkeepers have to be confident building out from the back. So Lopez has to be able to use his feet pretty well, or Pepe Reina has to use his feet pretty well to play out from the back, be confident to play them short passes, beat the opposition's press. And obviously they use the goalkeeper as the extra man to do this. So having a ball playing goalkeeper especially with the confidence that someone like Lopez brings, is really essential to how they're going to play. But also the likes of De Sena and Varane are going to be really important in and influential in this ball playing system. And what's really interesting then is about the double pivots. The double pivots, as you can see from the average positions, are always so tight together. They're really narrow and they sit really close like this, but never on the same line. So what I mean by that, let's give the ball to De Sena. In this situation, Melo goes high, and I'm going to say it wrong, Bronoda, something like that, goes deeper, so they can form this triangle to beat the oppositions in their press. And similarly, if the ball then goes to Varane, we've got this triangle here, and obviously you've got the fullback as well, who is also able to be used in the build-up. However, one tactic that I find that Cesc Fabregas, I find it really interesting, what he spoke about on the coach's voice, is a kind of thing that he calls goes fishing. He likes his team to go fishing. And I'm sure in Como, with all the lakes that they have there, they will be able to do that pretty well. I am joking, by the way. He uses this term in the sense of what we would say is baiting the press, or baiting the opposition in their press. So when the opposition do come really high, press up against their players, especially their back line, Como have to be comfortable with inviting that pressure on, and then almost play really vertically in a sense to beat this press. In other words, it's pretty much a way to play through the lines really efficiently, really quickly. And by doing this, the ball, say for example, is with Varane. If the opposition are really high up against their defence, this is why the 4-2-2 formation has the strikers actually more as number 10s, because this ball here has to be available. If there is no other option, if this passes off and this passes off, this ball between the lines has to be an option. And similarly on the other side, if the ball is really pressed by the opposition, this pass has to be available. And that's why the two strikers are essential to drop deep. Belotti and Cutrone will almost play as number 10s, and they'll drop into the pockets to help link up the play, get involved in the attack, but also bring the ball from the midfield or from the defence out to the attacking positions. And what's also really interesting with the two strikers dropping into this number 10 position is it affects how the opposition then, where they place their back line. Obviously, in this kind of situation, you could see their two centre-backs push really high up against Belotti and Cutrone, but then that opens up so much space for the likes of Cunha to make a run in behind, Verdi or Stravatza to make a run in behind, or Cutrone, whoever, to make runs in behind. If the opposition are playing a really high defence because they're pressing up against Belotti and Cutrone, it means there is space. And what is so essential is of attacking the space, and vertically if possible. But also, if the centre-backs decide not to push up against the two strikers, it means they've got a load of space, because even if the two double pivots of the opposition then sit on them, you've then got the two defensive midfielders that are able to get onto the ball and instead attack the space. So regardless, there's always space. And as you can see, as I always talk about, we get this. Bonus points if you spotted it earlier. It's a box midfield. Everyone knows I'm obsessed with the box midfield, and obviously Cesc Fabregas has decided he also wants to use box midfield. So fair play to him. However, intensity and forward movement is also imperative. If the ball is over here, the centre defensive midfielders have to be able to make short, really quick sprints to break away from their man, so this passes on to then link this ball up. It has to be an option, or for Bronoda to then get onto the ball. It has to be one-touch football. They have to be really quick and fluid so that they can play forward really quickly. Again, I believe that probably comes from Cesc Fabregas being a midfielder himself and really enjoying the aspect of playing the ball forward towards his attack. It's something similar like here. He wants his midfielders to put that effort in to make that a short sprint, get on the ball, one touch, get it forward. Attack the lines, attack the oppositions, get 1-versus-1 with the wide players. It's really important, and it's a progressive style of football that we see the like of Xabi Alonso using a lot at Bayer Leverkusen, and I really like it when managers do this kind of style, because otherwise we're used to seeing defensive setups with a 5 at the back, and I'm not saying they can't go into a 5 at the back or a 3 at the back formation, but I like these new systems that aren't really conventional but still are based on the same philosophy, and I think that's kind of what we're seeing here. Now, we've seen this style in the Serie B. Whether they adopt the same philosophy in the Serie A? I don't know. Obviously, against bigger teams, maybe they will drop into a back five, maybe they will defend deeper, maybe they won't attack with 4 players as such. We don't know. We'll have to wait and see in that regard, but I do think that they should continue trying to play this style of football. I think it would be better if they lost more games but stuck to their style rather than really clinging on for staying in the league by playing a 5-4-1 or something that all the fans are a bit bored by. However, it is safe to say this club is certainly in the right hands, is going in the right direction, so what can we expect to see from Como going forward and going into the future? Well, whilst this team is certainly a squad worth keeping an eye on next season, they're also a squad that haven't all played at this kind of level before. There's a lot of strong players in there, and they do play an attractive style of football. I think for them, staying in the league next season will be an achievement. I think that's kind of what they have to set their targets to. We're not looking at, despite the signings that they've made, we're not looking at some team that's going to be pushing for the top half. Probably going to be looking at a team that's going to try and finish 15th, 14th, around about there. When you look at what Cesc Fabregas has done, this is technically his first full season as a head coach for the first team. So it's going to be a big season for him. I mean, you look at the likes of Xavi, who obviously started out in Al Sadd, the likes of Xabi Alonso, who didn't necessarily do the... I'm not saying he did a bad job, but didn't do the absolute best with Bayer Leverkusen. It was his second season they really excelled. And you look at Mikel Arteta, it took them a while to develop this philosophy. So we have to understand, we have to give Como some time. Also, it's a huge ask to ask all these new signings to immediately get on. Obviously, it's great that they've signed them in a time where they can then go into the pre-season together and kind of get used to how each other plays, but some signings haven't been finalised. There's a lot of new names here. They're not all just going to immediately drop into the squad and play perfectly. And that is something we have to remember. But there you have it. Como is certainly a team to keep an eye on next season. And they are one that I will definitely be watching, seeing how they're doing, probably analysing a little bit. Go follow me on Twitter as well, at _Cameron Schultz, because I do like analysing teams, the most bizarre ones as well. So they might be one of my teams that I watch next season. I've got a long list of teams that I want to keep an eye on, and they are on that list. But let me know, how do you think they'll do in Serie A next season? Do you think these signings are going to work? And what else do you think they need to stay in the Serie A going forward? Are they good enough signings? Probably right. They probably are good enough. But let me know down below in the comments, what do you reckon? And if you want to see another young, bizarre manager whose tactics I think are going to break the Premier League, then go and check out this video here about Fabian Hürzeler at Brighton. But until next time, I will see you very soon, and thanks for watching.